Good evening. I want to thank everybody for joining us this evening. I call upon Benjamin Holzer to lead us in the national anthem and singing of HaTikvah.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Kolod balei Penima nefesh Yehudi Homiya Ulfasei Mizrach Adima Ayin Litzion Sophia Yerushalayim liyotam chafshi be'artzeinu eretzion Yerushalayim.
For the last couple of years, I've introduced the candle lighting with the very same thought, and this year I want to add one dimension to that thought. Ner Hashem Nishmas Adam. The flame, the light of God, is through the image of man. We light Yurtzai candles, of course, tonight and throughout the year for our loved ones, to express the thought that their flame continues to flicker. Although they've been extinguished physically, they're never extinguished in our minds, in our hearts, and the memories live on forever. However, this year as we find ourselves in a very, very difficult, precarious position, such a delicate situation for our people and for our country, Medinat Yisrael and Am Yisrael, I want to add one dimension. In the world of Chassidus, based on the Midrashim and Kabbalah, the Eish Tamid, the eternal flame, on the Mizbeach, on the altar, in the Beis HaMikdash, in the temple, symbolize the eternal bond, the never extinguishable bond between Hashem, the Almighty, and His people, Klal Yisrael. It symbolizes that Hashem commits to us. He'll never allow us to ever be extinguished. He'll give us strength and resilience to be able to withstand some of the most difficult challenges we face. And we face significant challenges right now. And so, as we light the candles tonight commemorating those killed in the Shoah, symbolizing once again Ner Hashem Nishmas Adam, that their memories are never extinguished, we also have in mind the Eish Tamid, that bond between us and Hashem. As we experience challenges, we are resilient, we are His with a capital H, Eish Tamid. And we, as He promises us, will never be extinguished. For the first candle, we call upon Randy Silber with her children, Tali and Josh, and granddaughter, Siri. For the second candle, Mrs. Ann Koenigson and her daughter, Chavi, and granddaughter, Lauren, and great-grandsons, Jeremy and Nate. For the third candle, Mrs. Ilsa Stern, her son Stephen, and granddaughter Lauren, and great-grandson Benji. For candle 4, Sharon Muchnick, accompanied by her daughter Elisheva and grandson Sammy. For candle 5, Sharon Schulman and her son Lev. For candle 6, Mrs. Lisa Baer and her daughter Sandy and grandson Ariel.
Call upon Rabbi Mordechai Chiner of Eitzhem Dogwood Park to lead us in Tehillim.
We'll say Tehillim Kuf Lamed 130. Shir Amalos Mimama Kim Karasicha Adonai. Adonai Shema V'Koli Tihyano Aznecha Kashuvos L'Kol Tachanunai. Im Avonos Tishmoya Adonai Mi Yamod. Ki Yimcha Hasalicha Leman Tivarei. Kivisi Adonai Kivisa Nafshi V'Lidvaro Hochalti. Nafshi Adonai Mi Shomerim Laboker Shomerim Laboker. Yachel Yisrael El Adonai Ki Im Adonai HaChesed V'Arbeimo Fidus. V'Hu Yiftes Yisrael Mikol Avonosav.
Please join us in reciting Achenu. Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael. Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael. Hanetunim Asara. Asara Ubashivya. Omni Bein Hayah. Bye. Bishilul Legeula Shabbat Ubizman Karim Ani Mami Emuna Shalema Levira Samashiach Ani Mami Ani Mami Emuna Shalema Levira Samashiach Ani Mami Li'azavi she'yisameach im kol zeh achakelo L'chol yom she'yavon L'chol yom she'yavon Li'azavi she'yisameach im kol zeh achakelo L'chol yom she'yavon L'chol yom she'yavon.
Yasher Koach to our choir. We're honored this evening to have Eliza Toplin join us to present her remarks and reflections on post-Holocaust Europe. Eliza, a West Hempstead native, attended the Tiferet Center in Ramat Beit Shemesh following her graduation from the Stella K. Abraham High School for Girls. She's currently attending Lander College for Women, where she is studying marketing and management. We welcome Eliza to the podium.
Good evening, everyone. Just want to start out by thanking everyone for coming tonight. The Bishop Rabbi Galler, the Bishop, my parents. A little over a year ago, I experienced the most life-changing moment of my life. With the help of my parents and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I went to Poland with my seminary. When I was preparing this speech, I was going through my notes as I journaled. And I remember I paid attention to a lot of the detail of the setting of our trip. And I look back, and I think of it as hashgacha pratis. The day we landed in Poland, it was dark, it was gray, it was gloomy. It really set the tone for a lot of us coming into Poland, helping some of us put ourselves in the shoes of the people during the Shoah. We went to many different places, from Warsaw to Krakow. We visited camps, forests, museums, different shuls, went to different towns, and if I had the time to speak about everything, we'd be here for a while. But one place that stood out to me the most that I think about on the daily was the Children's Forest. This was known to be a place where Nazis would take children and babies to be murdered in horrific ways. And our tour guide spoke to us about how these children never had the opportunity to grow up, build families, have successful careers, become influential people in the world, but most of all, never had the opportunity to hear the words, "I love you," from their parents. And this really stuck out to me the most, because hearing "I love you" from my parents is something I never take for granted every day. Our tour guide was very into playing music for all of us. She told us how music connects us into ways that we would never think about. And she would always play for us every place we went to. She would always play Gam YIWH by Waterbury. This pasuk is located in Parakhov Gimel Tehillim, where David HaMelech talks about how no matter where he is, he lacks nothing in this world because Hashem is always with him. The pasuk Gam YIWH v'geitz al mavet lo irara ki ata imadi shiftecha u'mishantecha hema yanachamuni. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff encourage me. At the time, I didn't really know what those words meant. But I did think about how every place we went to, Poland is one of the darkest places in the whole world, And I felt Hashem every place we went to. When we were walking down the train tracks of Auschwitz, when we were walking inside of gas chambers, walking through ghettos, everywhere we went, I always felt Hashem with me. And in the beginning of my speech, I mentioned how our trip started out as darkness. It was gloomy, it was gray. But when there's darkness, light always follows. So we did start out with dark and gray, but then as our trip went on, the sun came out. And I remember our last day standing in Auschwitz, I looked around, the green grass, the sun shining on our faces, and I was reminded that in every generation, there are always people out there who are trying to kill us. Every generation. And I was reminded that they try so hard, but they haven't taken the message that they can do whatever they want to us, and we're still here. The Nazis were known to strip people of their clothing, of their possessions, of everything. Strip them of everything so that when they are killed, they don't know who they are. But they don't know that you can take everything away from us, but we still have Hashem. We still have our Jewishness with us. Our very last destination on the trip, we went to the hotel. We got there just in time to daven Nate. We started off with the kumzit, and then we followed with davening. And I remember looking around at my peers, and I was smiling at everyone. So many of my peers are descendants of Holocaust survivors, and I just kept thinking, wow, we are all examples of Hitler's failure to destroy us. And we were in the best place possible to be doing this, not only here, standing here today, we're standing right next to the holiest place in the world, at the Kotel. So I just want to say thank you again to my parents, because if it weren't for them, I would not be here tonight speaking, and I would not be the person who I am. They were really, because of them, my life has changed so much for the better. And ultimately, thank you to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because he plans everything, but we don't know why. But everything he does is for a reason, and I thank him. Thank you.
Lisa Baer was born in Frankfurt, Germany in 1926. She attended Samson Raphael Hirsch High School. She witnessed Kristallnacht and experienced all of its ramifications. This motivated her family, consisting of her mom and two sisters, to work even harder to try to escape. The family experienced many trials and tribulations to get visas, and finally in November 1940, their hard work paid off. They left Germany via Spain and Portugal and arrived in New York. Mrs. Baer worked as a dressmaker on custom-made clothes for many years. After graduating college at the age of 57, she became an art teacher to many students in yeshivas and day schools, an educator for Jewish teachers how to incorporate art in the classroom setting, and an arts camp crafts instructor in various adult settings and sleepaway camp. She married Manfred Baer in 1952 and is proud mother of two children, Sandy Baer Morad and Myron, and several grandchildren and great-grandchildren. She also gives a number of talks, which is normally known as Names, Not Numbers. She gives talks every month in the Museum of the Jewish Heritage. And on a personal note, I've known Lisa and her whole family for over 50 years, and I'm very proud to introduce Lisa Baer to speak to us tonight.
Good evening. Thank you for inviting me and sharing my experiences in Frankfurt, Germany. As Stephen said, I was born 1926. You can all figure out how old I am. And make it easier, I'm 97. Anyway, and I had a very nice youth. I had friends, I went to school, I went to Samson Raphael Hirsch, to yeshiva. Everything was very good until 1933. 1933 was really the beginning of the Holocaust. Hitler came into power and things started to get scary, or whatever you want to put it, very, very quickly. Laws were passed, restrictions were made. My late father was a stockbroker, and one of the very early things that Hitler did is no Jewish stockbrokers. he was fired or laid off, whatever, which he took very badly. He suffered a whole year until he finally had a stroke in 1934, and he died a year after Hitler came to power. And things happened already while he was alive. Doctors, for instance, Jewish doctors could only treat Jewish people. Jewish people could not go to non-Jewish doctors. You started seeing signs on various shops, Juden sind hier unerwünscht, which means Jews are not welcome here. One of the early things that Hitler did, he took away our telephone. So we really had to communicate. You had to do it with snail mail or walk over to the friends or what have you. So that was a very difficult situation. One of the other things, we could not have any more radios because he was afraid that we would send messages to Europe, to other countries, to talk about what's going on. We had a passport, and I brought mine. I guess you can't see it. The passport had a big J in it for Jude. Maybe some of you may be able to see it. And which means that if you traveled, you right away were identified as a Jew and certainly couldn't stay in a country where you didn't have a visa. Not only did we have a J in it, every Jewish female had to accept the name Sarah as a middle name. It was legal. My passport is Lisa Sarah. And every man had to adopt the name of Yitzhak. That was it. So you were identified as a Jew no matter what. There was some sort of a curfew that Jews couldn't go out at night. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I do remember that we were really stuck at home most of the time. Jews couldn't go to museums, they couldn't go to the library. And we didn't say anything except it'll get better. He will get killed. Whatever we said obviously didn't happen. It got worse and worse, and then of course 1938 came Kristallnacht. Now Kristallnacht was really all planned out. All that Hitler needed was a reason to go after the Jews, arrest the men, burn the synagogues, and so on. It was because it would be possible for overnight that this happened in an organized way. I guess you all know that the excuse, so to speak, for Kristallnacht was that a young Jewish boy shot one of the Germans. He was very upset because his parents were supposed to be deported, and he killed this I don't remember his name, and the next day or two, Kristallnacht was in place. And so in our house where we live, we lived like one flight up, and my mother's parents lived right above us. And it came Kristallnacht. They broke down the door in our house, about 4 or 5 big burly guys, and started with a stick smashing the glass from a little curio cabinet and taking whatever they thought they would like from that little cabinet, including my father's iron cross, because a Jew can't get an iron cross that belongs to us, but not to the Jew. My mother was a little woman, maybe a few inches taller than I am, so she went over to one of the guys and put her hand on his arm, and he said, "Listen, I have old parents upstairs. They'll be petrified if you come and break anything or what have you. They won't know what it's all about. Do here whatever you have to do. You can take whatever you want, and you can destroy whatever you want. Don't go upstairs. And believe it or not, this guy looked at my mother and said, okay, and took his 4 companions out with him and did not go upstairs. So not only my grandparents, but all the other tenants in the house, mostly they were Jewish, were saved. And but we didn't know, since we had no radio, we didn't know what was going on until one of my cousins came over and said that her father was taken to Dachau, and said all the men are being arrested. They're being sent to concentration camps. And it was now after this, everybody wanted to leave. They saw this isn't getting better, this is only getting worse. And there was people tried to get to Central America, to South America, to England, whoever would possibly take them. And America had a quota system, and people wrote to the consulate for a quota, and within a matter of 2 weeks, the quotas were given out for years ahead because the quota wasn't so high. We also wrote for a quota and had a fairly high number, and if everything would have gone, that all these people would have gone to the consulate, we would have been like 3 years later. But people dropped out because they did go to other countries, and so we finally had our chance to go to Cuba, to the consulate in Stuttgart. So here my mom went with her 3 kids. I was at the time 12, and my sister was 14. My older sister was 18. And we went to the consulate and did all the paperwork, and the consul decided that really we couldn't, she couldn't make it in America with 3 kids. But if we would get some kind of an affidavit that would give us $7,500 in 1939, that would, maybe he would reconsider. So my mother telegraphed to America, you got to get that money together. Now all our relatives were poor, or certainly not rich. They also came here with very little, and they thought my mom was a little out of place. Anyway, but she said this is our only chance to get the visa. Believe it or not, they did get that money together. I have the paperwork here. I'm sorry I can't show you what it is, but they got this $7,500 that only my mom could touch. And we got that piece of paper, and we went back to the consul a few months later, and he saw that, you know, we had certainly money to get started. I mean, $7,500 was a lot of money. And we got our visa to go to America. Now, meanwhile, it had gotten to be 1939, and the war started. And things were totally different again. Certainly curfews were installed, and everybody got ration stamps, including us, and each stamp was stamped with a J, so we couldn't go to any store. We only could go to the stores that were for Jews, and they were only open a few hours a week, and they were usually not stocked with whatever we wanted. But we did the best we could. I don't remember being hungry. But we, amongst other things, we could also get meat, non-kosher meat, And since we are Orthodox and stayed Orthodox, we couldn't use it. But my mother found this bakery somewhere in the city that would take our meat very quietly and give us in turn some sugar or butter or eggs or flour, whatever they could manage to give us. So this exchange was made. We bought the meat, and I was the shaliach to take that little package of meat, go to the bakery, knock on the door, give them the meat quietly, and they give me whatever they wanted, extra eggs, butter, whatever. No word was spoken. And I went home to bring it home. I was chosen to do it because I didn't look particularly Jewish. I wasn't outstanding in any kind of a way, and I didn't know what I was doing. I was told, go there, take whatever they give you, so I wasn't scared or anything. And I brought it home, of course, only later on, many years later, that I realized if I had gotten caught, that would have been the end of me. So now since we had the visa, now came and it was wartime, and Italy was already involved, all of Europe was involved, except Portugal. And that was our aim, to get to Portugal, get steamship tickets, and go to America. We were, as far as taking stuff along, we were allowed to pack household items, sheets, dishes, what have you, and there were lists exactly what we were packing. 10 dishes, 4 soup bowls, whatever it was. And this was all packed according to those lists, which the Germans permitted. And some things they said we couldn't pack, and it was crossed out. But so these cases, big wooden cases, were packed by professionals and who stuck to the list, and with the hope that maybe we would get them to America eventually. I will backtrack for a minute about Kristallnacht. The punishment was not only that our synagogues were burned and the men were arrested into a concentration camp. The Jewish population of Germany had to put up 1 million Reichsmark as a excuse, whatever you want to say, and which was a lot of money. And how do they allocate it? And I must say there was still a skeleton of Jewish organizations that kind of looked after these things, that helped out people who really needed help. And with that, the money was taken out of our accounts, our bank accounts, and that's it. The Germans, so it was already wartime, that the Germans decided that the Jews really couldn't own any silver stuff or gold stuff or jewelry, and they had to turn it in to the police station or whatever. All they were allowed, a woman was allowed a wedding band, candlesticks, and you were allowed 1 set of eating utensils, fork, knife, and spoon, and I believe a watch. Everything else had to be turned into the Germans. But there was one little loophole there. They would appraise what you turned in and convert it into foreign currency, and if you could come up with that foreign currency, they would hold it in a sealed suitcase in the police station until you left the country. It was a pretty crazy scheme, But my mother was attached to the silver, and it was beautiful silver. And so she decided to appeal to the powers that be. Can you hold the mic? Okay. Oh, all right. Any better? To the powers that be, it was a matter of $100 because Germany was very short on foreign currency, which they really needed for some trading. And she went through the whole thing, and I have the receipt. We left the suitcase with silver at the police station to be gotten out when we get out of the country. Anyway, where was I? 1939, and we were trying to get a way to get out of Germany. Holland and Belgium were already overrun. Part of France was overrun, and everybody was going east. Everybody was going towards Spain and Portugal. Again, the Jewish, some kind of Jewish organizations were helpful in getting us tickets to go by plane to Spain, and then from there to Portugal. The Germans had restricted how many Jews could be on one plane, 4 people, and we were 4 people, so that was lucky. And we somehow managed to get tickets to go to Barcelona, where we were picked up by a family that we didn't know, and they were kind enough to put us up for the night, and next day to bring us back to the airport so we could continue our trip to Portugal, to Lisbon. We all had a little suitcase with our possessions, very little that we were allowed to take. And of course we had this suitcase that we picked up from the police before we left with the strict orders: it cannot be opened until we are across the German border. So when we finally opened it, it could have been bricks in there for all we know, but believe it or not, everything was there, somewhat tarnished. But all the jewelry silver was there, just as we left it. We had no money, because all you were allowed to take from Germany was 10 mark, which at that time was the equivalent of $4. So we each had $4. My mother anticipated that along the way we would have to do a little bribing to some people. So I don't know where, she got 2 bottles of schnapps or liquor to put in the suitcase for that very purpose, that we needed someone maybe who would help us out, that we needed to give him something, and certainly we had no money to give them. We were just overnight in Spain, and the next morning, afternoon, I don't remember, we took the plane to Lisbon. Lisbon was overrun by refugees, because from Netherlands they went to France, and they went on, and Lisbon was the place they all wanted to go to get out of Europe and go wherever, whoever would take them. We were fortunate that we had visas. We were also fortunate that the family in America put money into the HAPAC, to the travel agency, for tickets, and so we could bargain a little bit. We didn't just say we want tickets. We said, you have our money, give us the tickets. None of us knew any Portuguese or Spanish. Conversations were difficult. We were put up in one room somewhere in Lisbon I don't remember who gave us money for food, but we did have food, and money for transportation to go back to the steamship line. And after about 4 or 5 days, we managed to get 4 tickets to go to America. Each ticket there was $320. Again, a lot of money, but thanks to the family here who borrowed from strangers, from everybody. I see names on these affidavits that I had no idea who they were, who had put money into either the tickets or the affidavit for my mom for the $7,500. Anyway, we managed to get the tickets and left Europe in November 1940, wartime. It was an American ship. It used to be a boat that transported bananas from Cuba to New York, and the holes where the bananas were made into dormitories for men and women. And again, we were lucky. We were 4 people, and they gave us a little, one of the few staterooms that was reserved, I guess, for crew or for other people. And we made the crossing. We went all the way south until we got close to Bermuda. There the ship stopped, and a pilot from Bermuda came on a little boat. I still remember seeing him on the boat and going up the rope ladder to guide us around Bermuda, which was very heavily mined, and kept us on the best route that we could go for New York. So we kind of went around Cuba, and which took an extra day or 2 days, I don't know. And then we came to New York. On the trip, we were treated royally. There was plenty of food. We didn't eat the meat, but there was lots of other food. They were very good to us, the American staff on the boat. And we made it, as you can see, that we actually landed in Hoboken. I didn't know what Hoboken was. I didn't know Jersey. I didn't know anything. When my uncle picked us up and explained that we're going through the, I guess, Holland Tunnel underwater, and I was petrified. I thought, after all this, I'm going to drown now in the river, because it's not reasonable that we go through the water. But of course we made it, and I'm grateful for whatever we had and whoever gave us a break, and which we needed when we came here to get started, school, place to live, and all that. But we all worked, we all put it together, and unfortunately I'm the last one of the family to be alive. And here I am with my 2 kids, and the grandchildren, all that. I don't know if I'm allowed to take questions or any questions, any comments. I'm sorry that I cannot do anything with the paperwork. I have copies of these very interesting documents. I donated everything I had, which was over 100 pieces of paper. I donated it to the Museum of Jewish Heritage, and they have it's available to look at. I don't know exactly how it was archived, but none of the papers that that I still had got lost. Everything is there, and I'm very happy that they took it and translated. Most of it was in German. Everything was translated and put into their library or to their archives. Anybody would like to know anything more, and I'm happy to comply.
neighbors treat you in Germany?
Our neighbors in
How did your neighbors treat you while this was all happening?
you mean in Frankfurt? Or where?
In Germany. In Frankfurt.
In Frankfurt. There was very little interaction with neighbors, but since we had lived there a long time and they had lived there a long time, they did not show any kind of anti-Semitism, but they also didn't act as our friends. We did have a lawyer, a Gentile lawyer, who was amazing, just amazing. He helped us out with paperwork. We couldn't possibly have made it without him. When the war ended, he wrote that he's now a poor man. He was, I guess he was in the army or what have you, and it was up to us to help him out. We sent food and clothing because he was just a wonderful guy. And our neighbors really, nobody bothered us, and there was very little interaction.
Have you returned to Frankfurt in the...
Yes, I was back in Frankfurt 1995 because the Germans decided they would invite their citizens to come back and see how good they are and how wonderful everything is. And so my husband, who also was from Frankfurt, and had totally different memories because he left in 1934, so he didn't really experience much of the anti-Semitism. So he and I were guests of the Germans along with other refugees. They paid for everything. They wined us and dined us and gave us spending money and took us on trips to various places, and very enjoyable, supposedly. After a few days, I got very squeamish, and I kept on looking over my shoulder, and I made believe that I was not German, whereas my husband enjoyed every minute of it. We took Myron, our son-in-law. He wanted to go. He wanted to see where we lived, how we lived, the house I was born in. We went to the cemetery, to the grave of my father. I had never been there, and my grandparents, and who died in 1941, 1942, respectively. And I was amazed that not only the grave was there were proper gravestones, and again, there must have been some kind of a Jewish organization who took care of these things. And we were in America at wartime, and there was no communication, so we didn't know what was happening, but apparently it was all done very properly.
Yes, I have a question. Having experienced the anti-Semitism in the 1930s, what are your thoughts about what is going on in the world today with anti-Semitism and on the college campuses?
It's like deja vu. When I see what's going on, when I hear what's going on, and I encourage any kind of action to fight against it, because it starts with little things, and now it's already bigger things, and you can't ignore it, obviously. I don't know the answer to how to fight it, but I do know that we cannot ignore it, because you see the progression of little incidents and then big incidents that come on, so it's very upsetting.
Can you speak a little bit to your experiences adjusting to life in America and how your family supported itself when you came to America?
I'm sorry that I did not.
The question was, can we talk a little bit about adjusting to life in America?
Oh.
And how you,
Adjusting life to America, we shared an apartment with another family. That was very common in those days. People had big apartments for that very reason, that when refugees would come, they would need a room or a half an apartment or what have you. So we shared an apartment. We were 6 people in like 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom, but you make it work. My 2 sisters worked, my mother worked. I had to go to school. I was just turned 14 as we came here, and I went to what was then junior high school, right at the border of Harlem. And to me, it was a little scary. I had only seen black people in the circus. And here I was in a class with, I guess most of the kids were black or not Hispanic. There was other refugee children. And I must say, the kids were wonderful. They took us under their wings, sort of helped us out. Basically, we refugees, we did have an education. We did have schooling, and we learned English very quickly. I would say half a year, then we were certainly able to participate in the classwork, and that was it. It was sink or swim, and we all swam. We all made it, and I went for high school and what have you. Adjustment was difficult because we really came here with nothing, so we had to start buying furniture, and of course we bought secondhand stuff. And I remember we bought a pull-out couch, secondhand, complete with bedbugs. And of course we weren't even familiar with bedbugs until I was so bitten up. My mother said, "Got to go to the doctor, see what's going on." He took one look and said, "Bedbugs." So we had to give up this beautiful couch, the pull-out that we had bought, and put it on the street, with a garbage collection, and bought something new. So, yeah.
One last question.
Since most professions were closed to the Jews, what did they do between 34 and 38?
The house that I lived in, we had belonged to my father's family, and of course when he died it went to my mother, and it was a small apartment house, and we lived literally on the rent of that house. My mother was a super, so to speak. She was very handy, and it was fully rented. And when we left Germany, it was sold to a very decent non-Jew who promised that we could live in the apartment until we left, until we would have a visa to leave, and he would let my grandparents stay there until the end, and that's actually what happened. They died in their own apartment 3 years after we left. Money was tight. Money was tight.